Welcome to the shack. We're about to rock. We got the Deacon 2 and DZ. Dr. DZ, how about you? Stories from the shack.
Hello everyone and welcome to Stories from the Shack. This is the Deacon and that's my main man DZ. We're going to talk about some music today. I hope we have some jazz fans out there, because we're going to kind of explore jazz music and talk a little bit about it, the history, the chord structure, some of the prominent characters over the years. So I'll just start out with a little bit of history. It started in 1920s in places like New Orleans. It was based on African spirituals and blues, ragtime. A lot of times they call it Dixieland music. Some of the major players have been Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, and one of my favorites, Herbie Hancock. I strongly suggest, if you have not heard any of Herbie Hancock's music, it's very, very good. So I'll hand it over to DZ and he'll take it from here and talk a little bit more.
See, my first introduction to jazz, I guess, or characteristics of jazz would be that there were no rules. Music that had no rules. So you could go off time, you could go off beat, as long as sometimes you came back and met somewhere, in the middle. And that's what interested me about it, I think, first and foremost. The idea that, you could, time signatures, throw them out the window, key signatures, throw them out the window. You don't want to obviously throw all the rules out the window, but and I really liked the idea of chromaticism, using half steps to get to where you want to go. That's pretty prominent in jazz.
Yeah.
And then I'm very big into the band Radiohead, and the two albums that I like the most by them, Amnesiac and Kid A, that's considered jazz, and I didn't know that until way later, and it made sense because it's really I don't want to say that they go off timing or out of key or anything, because the music does make sense, but it's pretty far out there, and that's what I like, the uniqueness of it.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that they go half steps, because a lot of times jazz is consisted of fifths and sevenths, and it's usually the flat fifths and the flat sevenths, right? Which, like say, that's that half step instead of full step. And a lot of things kind of unique to jazz, I guess you could say, is they strayed away from traditional triads. So 1-3-5, they go 1-3-5-7.
Sure. Yeah.
And things like that, and sometimes even they go 9, 11, and 13.
Sure.
To really go deeper into the chord structure. So that makes it a whole lot richer and deeper. And there again, as you said before, as long as you get back to where you need to be, So sometimes they have to speed that up to catch up.
So do you think that elements of jazz made its way into any popular music, rock and roll bands? Because I certainly do, because...
Oh, yes.
We talked about Pink Floyd before. I think it definitely made its way into some of their music. Yeah. Could have made its way into, obviously Radiohead. I've just brought that up there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily know if they're top 40, but they definitely are a pretty nostalgic act to this point.
Yeah. There's a close relationship between blues and jazz.
Okay.
And if you look at a lot of the English groups in the 60s, they were heavily influenced by guys like Muddy Waters. And even Albert King, probably, to some extent. They liked that, that jazzy, that blues, that deep, mellow, take you away, kind of music.
One thing that I also liked about jazz is it doesn't matter the instrumentation, whether it be guitar, horns, stringed instrument, violins, violas, whatever, what have you. But sometimes it always seems like there's that one off note, that one instrument playing something that's off note just slightly, that's adding tension to the music. And building that
Right.
tension is
Yeah,
one characteristic
exactly.
that I
Yeah.
really like of jazz as well. That
Yeah,
tension
like I
building.
say, a lot of times it's that fifth that does that.
Okay, yeah,
A lot
sure.
of times. There's a group, I think they were popular in the 80s, called Bob James. And I don't know if y'all remember that TV show, Taxi.
Familiar with the
Their
name,
theme
yeah.
song was called Angela, and he wrote that and played that.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of soft and mellow. It's not really upbeat like a lot of jazz stuff is. But there again, you said he had a lot of horns, a lot of brass, and even a stand-up bass that you don't see much nowadays. So I think jazz and blues is evolving like everything else. Like a lot of people categorize Herbie Hancock as acid jazz, right? Because he's got all these, kind of weird flowing notes that kind of carry away. Especially, he's got an album called Headhunters, and one of the most popular songs on that is called Chameleon, and it's kind of like Money. Starts out with
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Is that Chameleon?
very similar to Money
Okay.
to start.
Yeah.
It's all big,
That
and there's
bass.
a lot of bass that goes through the whole song. So there again, in the early days of jazz and blues, you probably wouldn't have had that. It'd be a lot more horns, a lot more brass, things like that. Like Dizzy Gillespie played a trumpet. Miles Davis played a trumpet, right? They're big jazz kings, right? There again, then you have Louis Armstrong. He's more blues than jazz, I think. But you look at these guys, they kind of took it to the next level, and I think when the things that they did brought it more into the mainstream
Okay.
of music.
See,
You think that's true?
I do, and I also think that you said that there was a lot of blues influence there and jazz, and I when I think of blues, I think of guitars. I don't necessarily think of horn sections
BB
or
King.
anything. Yeah, and I think that maybe when the two mixed, that's when maybe you got jazz rock or something along something along the lines
Exactly. Yeah.
of that. So, interesting point. And here, another question. I don't know if this has an answer to it, but so where would jazz end and blues begin?
Well, that's a very good. I don't know that there is a definite cutoff.
Or do the listener can tell something about it that the listener can tell
Well,
that they can?
I think blues is more solemn. It's like my dog ran away, my wife left me. Just like Albert King's song "Born Under Bad Sign," right?
Yeah. Okay.
That's the blues. That's the blues more than the jazz, but still has the basic structures of chords. Maybe not as many flats, but still, if you listen to the lyrics, what we talk about ZZ Tops, they play blues like Blue Jean Blues. It always starts out again too with that bass.
Yeah. Okay.
Ran into my baby, boom, 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 boom. Finally lost my old blue jeans, boom, boom, boom. Same, structure of the bass starting off the show.
See, and I've noticed that a lot actually. Going back to the Radiohead, that a lot of their more jazzier songs do start with a bass line that's not necessarily in a 4/4 time signature or 3/4.
Right.
It could be at 5/4 or 7/8 or something
Yeah.
like that, and then the rest of the band comes in and follows and does their instrumentation, adds their instrumentation. But
Yeah. Like Stormy Monday, I think that's like, wow, I can't remember. That's pretty high. I mean, it's well over, I think it's over 8 if I'm not mistaken.
okay,
I mean, it's fast. There again, that's Allman Brothers Band. That's the blues. Stormy Monday, can't remember. They play a lot of blues stuff too. There again, that's not really jazz, but still has kind of the same characteristics of, that southern, sad, storyline, I guess. Because if you listen to the blues, I mean, it's all, crying your beer stuff, right? Where jazz is a little more uplifting, so they kind of took the jazz theme, in my opinion, and made it made it happier, I guess. That makes sense.
It does, and now it's making me kind of think of something different. Going back to southern rock and everything, do you think that has elements of? I mean, obviously it has elements of blues in it, but do you think jazz made its way into that genre as well?
I think it's the other way around. I think jazz influenced it, not the other way around.
Okay.
Jazz
that's what I meant. Jazz influenced. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, jazz influenced.
Maybe I misunderstood. Okay. Yeah, I definitely think that. Because if you look at all the southern rock, there's a lot of blues in there, some jazz, I guess. Like say, to me, there's kind of a fine line of where it ends and begins, because you can't really tell. Obviously there's difference, right? But you look at Hoochie Coochie Man, Muddy Waters, that starts off with the bass, boom, 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 boom. It's in two different keys. I think the A and G, I think, are the most popular keys for that, so you can see the difference, but it all starts out the same with that bass, boom, 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 boom.
Another thing that I'm thinking about now as we're getting deeper into the conversation of jazz is I think I've mentioned before in conversations that I play live music, that I played in a band. And it's so funny when we're in the writing process of we hit an off note or something like that. The go-to joke is it's jazz, and I think that's the go-to joke in a lot of bands as they go through their writing process. It's our jazz song.
Yeah.
So
and maybe that's how it all happened. Maybe it was a mistake early on when all this started. They hit the wrong key and they hit the wrong note. They hit the flat instead of they hit the flat E instead of just E, right? For example. And so, wow, that sounds, let's stay with that. So it may have been all an accident. I don't know.
So what do you think the jazziest rock and roll album of all time, mainstream rock and roll album of all time is?
Jazz album? Wow.
Sure.
I don't know. Depends if, as far as besides guitar, I think Grover Washington Jr. On his saxophone is probably way up there. If you like saxophone, but if you like guitar and keyboard, I'd have to go with Herbie Hancock. If you like something in the middle, maybe Spiral Gyro. One of those groups. Catching the Sun is a real good song. Spiral Gyro, I don't know if you've heard that or not.
I haven't.
Then Chick Corea, he kind of had his own little kind of thing. It was a little bit different, but I think they're probably, at least they're older now. There may be some new ones out there. I haven't heard any new groups lately. I'm sure they're out there. But those are kind of my favorites. And with blues, Robert Cray Band, Smoking Gun. I mean, he led in the '80s. Man, he was the blues king.
Yeah.
So you look at all those guys, and they made a big impression on the future generations. And there again, it's a matter of preference. Some people don't like that. I mean, I listen to the music more than the words most of the time. So if somebody, I'm just listening to a song, I may listen to it 100 times and don't hardly know any of the words, because I'm not listening to the words, I'm listening to the music.
I can understand that. I don't necessarily listen to the lyrics per se, but I listen to the melody of the vocals.
Right, I listen to that, just like, I like the bass. Just like we've been talking about, a lot of these songs, these gentries, if you will, all start out with bass. Most of the time. Sometimes a drum. Even like Whipping Post, we talked about that. Barry Oakley was the bass player for the All Band, and they used to write, and when Greg Allman introduces the song, he says Barry starts us out. And then you hear Barry on the bass guitar. Boom, 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 you know. So that's what I really appreciate about that. They kind of take it from a different perspective. Because, I don't know, maybe there's a lot of rock and roll songs out there that start with the bass. I don't know. Do you know of a lot that start out with the bass? It's
Yeah, I
usually
could think
lead
of
guitar.
quite a few. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think at least one or two per album on rock albums that start with the bass.
Yeah. But it's not predominantly the bass.
Like I don't know. I'm going way back into 90s rock. I can think of a couple Weezer songs, a few Nirvana songs, things like that started off with bass.
Yeah.
So, but I think that bass is probably, I don't know, it just seems like a lot of bass players have that jazz in them. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Is I guess as compared to other
Well,
musicians.
the thing that's unique about the bass, I guess you could say unique, is the freedom that they have to play.
Yeah.
They can just run a riff.
And that could, feed into the whole jazz.
And that's all they
Yep.
need, right? They just play that 1-5-7, through the whole song or whatever, Or hook up with the drummer, just boom, 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 note for note with the drummer as you go through. So he's got all this freedom that the lead guitarist doesn't have. I mean, you gotta you
don't-
gotta stay on script, right?
Yeah, if
You're
you
done.
go off script, yeah.
So that's one of the things I
It's not
appreciate
good.
about the bass guitars. Yeah, you can just do that, run that riff. You don't have to, hit every note like the lead guitar does. And my understanding, someone said this, I don't remember who it was, said the bass player's job is to make everyone else in the band sound better.
It's a hard job. Important job.
And yes, that's why everyone is always looking for a bass player,
It's true.
because a lot of people can't do it. A lot of people, so.
And on that, we're going to end tonight. Remember to hit like and subscribe. Stories from the Shack is out. Jazz music.